public school system, I must ask, who will lead the future conversation regarding sex education when parents cannot or will not? If not you, then who? Social media? Porn? By taking the public school system out of the equation, you are leaving the conversation open. A conversation that social media and porn have no problem taking the lead on. Blanks filled with a script that consists of objectifying females and aggressive, controlling males always getting what they want from their female counterpart. Even if it includes violence and rape, a script that does not discuss consent, let alone the importance of being able to withdraw consent. Is that what you want your daughter, son, or their future spouse to believe a healthy relationship should consist of? How does this play out in society at large?
Dear Mom and Dad, in the 6th grade I was told by an older student I had to check out a site called Pornhub. In the 6th grade I thought sex was hugging and kissing, so you can imagine the shock when I clicked on the first video. I had no idea what to think, but something inside me liked it. This all started a deep fall into the dark world of porn. It seems like every day I was logging on to watch a new video. By the time I started masturbating to it, I was addicted. At this point in my life, I had only kissed a girl, but now my sexual tastes were women in porn.
Innocent minds are corrupted with one simple misclick. People and children reeled into a porn trap like a fish on a hook. Without proper sex education, there are no warning signs for a child experiencing porn for the first time. It is almost expected today that young people will see porn. Without education, the impact can be devastating. Young men think abuse and rape are acceptable because they are acclimated to it in porn, and no one told them differently.
Dear Mom, in my sexual citizenship class, we learned about how pornography has made society think differently and destructively about sex. I wanted you to know that I have fallen victim to this and had to do things I was not comfortable with just to fulfill a boy's porn-fueled fantasy. I wish I could have taken this class years ago to learn about non-toxic sex, as well as how to communicate when I'm not feeling comfortable doing something that my partner wants to do.
Dear Dad, you will probably be surprised. This is going to be the most honest conversation I've ever had with you.
Dear Mom and Dad, our generation has been ill-informed by the porn industry and all of its detrimental effects. My peers and I have been deeply affected by the influx of new technology throughout our lives. Because schools and parents have not taught teens about sex, we were quite literally left to our own devices, and many teens turned to porn to teach themselves about sex.
Dear Dad, I recently took a class called Sexual Citizenship and learned so much. Much of it was pretty surprising. Honestly, I wish that I had learned most of this information from you or by your example. I wish that you would have taught me how to communicate and not just superficial things, but my real emotions. I wish that I did not feel so much stress and anxiety when I want to tell someone how I honestly feel. I wish that I did not feel that I'm compromising my masculinity every time I cry or feel too emotional about something.
Dear Mom and Dad, I recently took a class and learned about aspects of relationships considered both healthy or unhealthy. I wish I had known the signs of an unhealthy relationship in middle/high school as I navigated through my first relationship.
My youth pastor began to sexually and emotionally groom me at age 14. I was unaware and naive that a 38-year-old Christian man would take advantage of me when I was at my lowest. You let me trust you, confide secrets in you, and love you, all for it to be sabotaged by your malicious and predatory intent. You were the person I called when I got in trouble with the cops and when my boyfriend cheated on me, and you took advantage of me every single time I needed you. At 14, I did not grasp that I should not have been hanging out with my 38-year-old youth pastor alone. You shouldn't be the one picking me up from my friend's house late at night because I did not have a ride. You shouldn't have ever put your hand on my thigh in the car. You shouldn't have drunk texted me, hitting on me through the church's own Instagram DMs. You played a dark and twisted game that will forever haunt me.
Dear little me, in my sexual citizenship class, we speak a lot about boundaries, negative effects of pornography, and learning about affirmative consent and personal agency. All are invaluable lessons for young people. I wish I had a better understanding of how harmful porn is, what affirmative consent looks like in many scenarios when I needed it in middle and high school. In my experience, a lot of people only have a vague idea of what affirmative consent is. They think it's just a simple yes or no response to someone. Consent is a lot more than just a yes or a no. and persuading someone to have sex with you or asking 10 times until they say yes is not consent.
Dear Mom, I thought this was okay for boys to touch me without giving me consent, and I saw absolutely nothing wrong with it. Honestly, I needed these lessons from my class a very long time ago. Since I was never asked for or taught about consent, I was the victim of sexual assault. I know it could have been prevented if I knew more.
I started watching porn at the age of 10. I became interested in YouTube and for some reason the idea of punishment, and I saw things that fascinated my imagination. Now I understand why some parents took their kids' phones at night, but that wouldn't have helped. I was too young to be exploring the web at night and was not ready to be exposed to the things I would discover.
In sophomore year, I had sex for the first time. I was extremely nervous about it. All I had done for the days leading up was watch porn as a teaching method for what I was going to do. I was nervous that I wasn't as big as the men in the porn or even close to as experienced. My first experience having sex was horrible. I thought to myself, why didn't she do what the girls in porn do? Why didn't I enjoy it as much as the guys in porn do? Needless to say, my entire experience was being graded against porn videos, which made me feel terrible about my sexual experience.
I needed to know that regularly watching porn kills self-confidence, libido, mental health, and body image.
I've learned that porn basically rewires your brain to view sexual interactions in a certain way. The acts depicted in porn, like choking, slapping, or anal sex, have become common among young people. And although some people may enjoy these things, many, specifically women, may not.
In class, I learned about what safe and healthy sex looks like. Unfortunately, it's not what teens experience today. Porn these days is something that can be addictive and honestly scares me. The first time I was shown porn was probably in middle school when my best friend Laura showed me on an iPod that she hid from her mom. My initial reaction was very interested and confused. So for a long time, I wondered about what I saw in porn. Dad, I had so many unanswered questions, zero healthy information, and no one whom I could talk about it with.
I started watching porn when I was 9 years old. My brother had asked if I had ever watched porn before, and as a curious 9-year-old, I went online and searched. Since that day, I have been fed these ideas about what sex is supposed to be like. In porn, I never saw an indulgence of consent or anything like that. I remember talking to my friends about porn. We would have conversations about what we saw, and we all thought the sex porn depicted was normal, and we expected those things of our partners.
I first heard peers talk about porn when I was in elementary school, so by the time middle school came around, they just weren't talking about it. They were going home every day and watching porn. They would come to school the next day and talk about what they saw, and sometimes even do a little show and tell on their phone. Nobody in these show and tell circles knew that in around 5 to 6 years their age group's numbers for erectile dysfunction would skyrocket, or that some people in that circle would grow up to be sexual abusers, even rapists.
Later I would discover Pornhub, trying to educate myself on how to please my partner. In the back of my mind, I knew watching porn was wrong because you told me years before, but I was just trying to find out how I was going to perform in the bedroom for my boyfriend. As I started watching videos, I began to develop this fear of not being good enough or being considered vanilla. This feeling of not being good enough or underperforming in the bedroom has followed me all the way to college.
But it wasn't until this class, learning about the effects of porn, that it clicked. If I had learned earlier, maybe I wouldn't have tried to convince myself after I had sex that it was good. Maybe I wouldn't have let myself feel used time and time and again.
The classic tale of a freshman girl dating the athletic senior boy never ends in a fairy tale. Here's the truth. I was sexually coerced into appeasing the golden boy's desires in ways that I did not even know existed at 15. It was emotional abuse, manipulation, and doing things that I didn't want to do because he loved me, and it wasn't a big deal. I did not understand what true love meant, and I was made to believe that sex was the pinnacle of all of it. I was used for my innocence. My boyfriend withheld his love from me unless we were doing what he wanted to in the bedroom.
He embarrassed me in front of people in order to make himself look more dominant. When I complained about feeling uncomfortable in my body, he constructed a diet for me and encouraged me to go to the gym. And then he acted like a stranger and made me feel stupid when I saw him there. He accused me of not trusting or loving him, and I didn't want to tell him something personal or do something sexually that he wanted to do. I needed to know when I was 13 what a healthy relationship looked like and what red flags of an abusive relationship were.
Because school never taught me about sexual abuse and unhealthy relationships, I had to figure it out myself, which is very traumatic. When I was 16, I had sex with a guy I liked at the time, and he was 20. He always talked about porn, but I just took it as something he does alone because I know a lot of guys watched it. I thought it didn't impact me. I think you should understand, among my peers, porn is completely normalized, whether it is the topic of a joke or guys outright vocalizing their porn fantasies with girls.
I needed to know that the acts performed in porn are hardly realistic. For me, regularly watching porn felt like having a visor over my eyes that twisted and contorted all messages and stimuli into something sexual. It was the first time I felt addicted to something. It was all I ever thought about.
You make it seem like porn is normal or healthy, and everyone watches it. You fail to teach things like porn may cause young men to suffer erectile dysfunction at a young age, a psychological problem, not a circulational problem. You make women feel like objects in the bedrooms instead of humans who deserve the same pleasure as men.
My partner assumed I wasn't a virgin and was very harsh towards me. Before we hooked up, he was nice to me. And over Snapchat, he acted like we were in a relationship. From the first time we met, he treated me inappropriately, immediately asking me to go into a room alone with him. I understand now this should have been a red flag. In the room, he choked me, picked me up, and threw me at the end of the bed. He didn't respect me or care about me at all. He knew I was bleeding and shaking and continued to have sex with me, because all he cared about was himself. I was scared and hurt, but I didn't know this was unhealthy. I was so focused on wanting him to like me and pleasing him. At the time, I didn't see this behavior as wrong, rapey, or unhealthy. Because I didn't know what a healthy relationship looked like, I reasoned that all boys treat girls like this sexually.
Porn contributes to the problem of consent because porn never shows consent. I've experienced sexual assault, as do have many of my friends. Culture and porn have taught us men's desires and fulfilling their sexual needs is more important than making sure their partner is comfortable and consenting to what they want to do.
Mom, you taught me as a kid to always look out for strangers, especially men. But you always assumed that people close to me or women could do no wrong. But I would find out that women can be abusers as well. They can assault, and unfortunately, because I didn't know any better, I was assaulted by them. Sadly, I've only been assaulted by people I knew and trusted. I took what happened to me and thought it was okay because they were friends. I needed to be taught how to spot an abuser and avoid the many bad situations I experienced in my childhood.
I needed to know that boys can be sexually assaulted. To be more specific, I wish I'd known that boys can get sexually assaulted and that it was okay to talk about it. I just took a class called Sexual Citizenship, and until this class, I didn't realize what happened to me is considered sexual assault.
I remember the first traumatic experience with someone violating my body at 13. I didn't even know what it was at the time. I didn't understand that I had been sexually assaulted by my neighbor. I knew it felt wrong. I wasn't dumb, but I didn't know the extent of the damaging effects it would have on my life for years. I remember men touching me, innocently, triggering uncontrollable anxiety. The hardest part is that the person who assaulted me was a dear friend. So I learned not to trust at an early age.
Underage drinking is constantly happening at high school parties. My friend got extremely intoxicated, and the next thing I knew, she had disappeared into another room. I had no idea what happened until the next morning, when a rumor spread that she hooked up with a guy in our grade that had a history of sexually assaulting girls. I just believed what happened between them was a consensual hookup. Drunk one-night stands are so normalized in our society that it didn't even cross my mind that she had been raped. She never told me, her best friend, that she was raped because she blamed herself for his unwanted and non-consensual actions. She was so intoxicated that all she could remember was his body on top of hers. She couldn't remember the situation enough to know whether or not she said yes. Because of my class, I know you cannot consent to sex when you are under the influence of drugs or alcohol. Alcohol disrupts our decision-making, and no matter what she said during the time, it is impossible to give consent.
Did you know that today you don't need to be physically taken or abducted to be considered trafficked? Did you know the grooming age starts at 8? That's when older men start reaching out to you. Remember when you got in that huge fight with Mom and Jana because she was worried too many random people were following you on Instagram? I'm glad she told Mom. It didn't hit me until halfway through the lecture, but I remember when I was younger and a man found my Kik account. He began a friendship with me and talked about things my friends and I talked about. Then I remember he sent a picture of his penis. He was definitely older than 9. I felt sick. I wanted to throw up. I deleted the app, afraid Mom would find it. I thought it was my fault. I now believe he was trying to groom me, and probably other young girls too.
I was 3 years old, and my little cousin came over. At the time, I'd say he was the closest friend I had. He said he had a new game he wanted to play. He guided me to the couch and laid me flat on my back. He then proceeded to pull my shorts down and put my penis in his mouth. At the time, I didn't know what was going on. I just started to feel the tickling sensation that intensified until I was left gasping for air. Afterward, he made me do the same to him in the backyard. It would take many more years until I was mature enough to understand that the same had probably been happening to him. Eventually, I made peace with the situation. Looking back, one of the most difficult things about the whole experience was I had no one I felt safe speaking with it about.
Did you know that 1 in 6 men have been sexually abused or assaulted? Maybe if more conversation about consent or predatory behavior or unhealthy relationships happened, we would have never had this statistic. Most importantly, Dad, I wish more fathers would teach their sons that if sexual assault does happen, it's powerful and healing to talk about it.
Even though the world is full of sex, the secrecy you instilled in me kept me from having a safe place to process that and get help. The secrecy meant I didn't tell you when a group of guys at school harassed me or didn't get my period for 5 years. The secrecy meant I didn't tell you when men online sent me dick pics or chatted with me about very inappropriate things. The world is full of sex, and what do you have for keeping me so sheltered? A daughter who's still gay.
This is the hard part to share with you. The first time I ever did something with a guy was with the help of a porn video. I used it to help me do the right things. I hate that porn has such a strong focus on degrading and hurting women. Almost every sexual encounter I've had with a guy, they have done most of what I've seen on porn, and by that I mean in a harsh, abusive way. It's very scary because this is normalized for my age, and any guy who does not perform harsh or aggressive behavior to a woman would be considered too vanilla or innocent.
Every video I watched had some ridiculous expectation of what a woman was supposed to do for their partner and how they were supposed to look. I have developed habits in the bedroom that your generation would probably consider abnormal. For example, slapping and choking are more common for my peers' sex lives because of the influence of today's porn. From my class, I understand this is because we are following a porn script. What porn shows us over and over again is violent and unhealthy. This is the sexual behavior that is like a script for sex. The message is, please the guy and prioritize his sexual needs while simultaneously degrading the female by slapping, choking, and degrading name-calling.
So when I went to his house for the first time, we had sex, and I was completely comfortable, but that was the only time. The next time I went over, he wanted to have sex without a condom, saying, it feels better to do it without one. So I gave in, even though I didn't want to, but I still said yes. From my class, I now understand that I was manipulated because I felt disempowered. He was so much older than me, and he flaunted to me that so many girls wanted him. Over time, his sexual requests got progressively worse, from choking, degrading me, calling me names, and as he got more comfortable knowing I would comply, he would slap me in the face and do worse. I felt worthless and scared because I believed if I told somebody, some people would make fun of me at school.
I only recently learned about consent beyond yes means yes. I am certain it is one of the most misunderstood and misinterpreted concepts in my generation. Things we have always done as teens, things we believed were normal, turned out to not be okay at all. My generation has grown up understanding the basic or traditional forms of consent, yes or no. Many think consent is granted because you previously allowed me to, or that is a lifetime or relationship-long agreement.
Here is what we need to start to learn. What is healthy during sex and what is not? That it is normal to feel awkward sometimes, and it is not healthy to feel like you are just an object. It's okay to stop in the middle of it, and it's not healthy to feel like you have to stick it out for your partner.
Consent is more like an ongoing conversation, checking in with your partner as sexual activity escalates to make sure they are okay with everything. A yes is not a yes and a plow through. It is important to observe your partner's body language and nonverbal cues while hooking up with them. It is essential to check in, verbally. Giving consent is all about what you and your partner mutually desire to do, but ultimately, you have absolute control and agency over your mind and your body.
If conversations about sex, emotions, and relationships are normalized, I could have learned more. It could have learned what really matters. It matters that sometimes I am left feeling worthless after sex. It matters that I think I can make a boy love me by having sex with him. It matters when the boy leaves before you even have your pants on. It matters when you are bawling your eyes out and the next morning wondering why you had sex. It matters when you have a pregnancy scare and there is no one there to tell you that it will be okay. It matters when you wake up in pain after sex and wondering if the sex was really consensual. It matters that you hear stories of other sexual assaults and wonders if what happened to you was sexual assault or not. This is the information that really matters.
By communicating with me that porn is unrealistic and wrong, depicts how to treat your partner, I could have avoided unwanted sexual behavior, anxiety when it came to sex, and years of feeling ashamed about my body image.
But I still wish you would have taught me what I am now learning, how to be critical and discerning consumer of media, including sexually explicit media. Taking this class had made me realize that the lack of comprehensive sex education is very detrimental to young people. It is important teens learn as much as they can about these topics before they are sent off into the real world. This information would have been invaluable to me at a younger age. It's terrible to realize now that what I have learned from porn wasn't realistic or healthy.
I would never have considered the psychological damage watching porn since I was 11 years old might have caused. But now I'm coming to the realization, how could it not?
Impacts on your brain that causes unhappiness, stress, addiction, the same way that alcohol and drugs do. I would be careful and aware of the consequences of porn. But because I was not, I went along in silence with guilt, wondering if I had something wrong with me, because I was not aware. I not only became addicted, but I became dependent on porn.
From my class, I now believe he must have learned how to treat girls from porn, and he thought it was normal. If only I had known then what I know now, I could have recognized the red flags. I would have known the qualities of healthy sexual encounter and healthy relationships. Maybe I could have prevented this trauma. I needed someone to tell me how a good partner treats you. When I was young, I needed someone to tell me I am more than just a body. I needed to know that there was a trusted adult that would not judge me and give me a safe space to process what had happened to me and the messages I was getting from our culture. I needed to understand that what happened to me was assault. What happened to me was wrong.
Remember when you told that 22-year-old you were 14? You were actually 12 and thought 14 was so much older. I wish I knew then all I am learning about in this class, how that could have been so dangerous and how age differences create an imbalanced relationship that disempowers you. Don't grow up too fast.
What I know now is that it is essential for young people to be educated about healthy relationships and the red flags of unhealthy ones. We also need to understand how easily grooming happens and what it looks like. It is essential to have a safe space within your family and friends or school where you can discuss, talk, and question relationships. It was in my college class on sexual citizenship that I learned about consent. Sadly, prior to my current relationship, I realized that I had never asked for or given consent to any past partner. This is something I needed to learn at age 13, not 20 years old.
I needed to know relationships are supposed to be fun, honest, supportive, make you a better person, and full of mutually amazing experiences.
The sex ed given in school taught us what consent was, but there is so much more to that than what was taught. Our sex ed class made it seem as though consent was one person asks, "Do you want to have sex?" and the other person responds, "Yes, I do." And then basically you could do whatever you please after that. We were deprived of the information, acknowledged that you should ask for consent multiple times during sex. Frequently check in and make sure the other person is still okay with what you are doing. Maybe your partner wanted to have sex, but they became uncomfortable, but didn't want to say anything because they already given consent.
I need to know that boys also get sexually assaulted, what it looks like, and I wish I had known how to reach out to someone that could have helped me, so I didn't have to trudge forward on my own.
The trauma she continually faces to this day, and the constant reminder that he denied her the right to agency over her body. She is 1 in a million girls that this happens to, and 1 in 10 girls that it happened to in my own school.
The homework has taught me that sexual assault looks different in every case. Most importantly, it has taught me that I am not alone. More than 1 in 3 women have experienced sexual assault. But why did I have to be one of those statistics?
Unfortunately, what I have experienced was not uncommon. Too many of my girlfriends have had similar scary experiences. Learning what healthy relationships look like and the red flags of unhealthy relationships changed everything for me. Learning about not just affirmative consent, but enthusiastic and ethical consent changed everything. I was never asked for consent by my first boyfriend, but even if I had at the time, I would have assumed that if I said yes to sex, I was saying yes to everything that he wanted to do. I needed to learn about all the different scenarios around consent and healthy relationships before I turned 16 to know what is good and what is abusive.
Today, I know when someone really loves you, they will let you know through their actions, not just their words. They won't try to go to another girl's house behind your back just to say hi. They won't embarrass you in front of their family because they think it's funny. They won't put you in situations that leave you questioning how to feel about yourself. I wish I believed the people around me who tried to warn me about the behaviors they noticed.
As a young girl, I wish I was warned about these things. Porn is something young kids are exposed to at such an early age. I wish you guys introduced this topic to me so I didn't have to learn the hard way.
I needed to know it's okay to walk away from a situation that makes you feel anxious, uncomfortable, or weird. I needed to know that when kids are assaulted, they don't forget. They need therapy. I grew up believing that other people's feelings mattered more than my own. I needed to know only I get to decide what happens to my body and that people close to us can be perpetrators of assault.
I am sharing this with you to emphasize the importance of parents having tough conversations about sex and healthy relationships with their children. Prior to this class, I had never admitted to myself how much hurt for the 15-year-old girl that didn't know how to say stop, or that it was her right. I never realized how much pain I carried for the high schooler that did not know that she deserves a romantic partner that communicates with her and understands her boundaries and never coerces her or makes her feel uncomfortable. How was I supposed to know?
Taking the topic of sex off the table means you'll never really know me. Because as a teen and as an adult, sex is inseparable from life and culture and ourselves. I needed you to talk to me about sex for so many reasons. So I knew you were a safe place to bring questions and concerns. So I knew you accepted me. So I knew I was normal. But most of all, I needed it to have a real relationship with you that exists beyond face value.
I wish that your dad would have had these conversations with you and his before him. I guess that's why it's called a vicious cycle. I hope that we can move on from this and that maybe one day we can have a conversation about what it means to be a man and how to engage the world in a healthy way.
We need to know what healthy relationships look like and that there is no normal. I just needed your acceptance and permission to be the most authentic version of myself that I could be. I mean, after all, the world has bigger problems than guys who kiss guys and girls who kiss girls.
I think schools need to do a better job at teaching us how to have sex safely and have healthy relationships rather than worrying about us having sex. Because the truth is, it's going to happen at some point. And wouldn't you rather be informed how to make the experience healthy, consensual, and safe? What they don't teach us only means that kids have sex unprepared in so many ways.
I appreciate it, sir.